Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Take Graphs, a Major League Baseball show here on the Chase Thomas podcast each and every Wednesday night. My good friend, Not Fangraphs Jon Tayler, up there in
New York City,
is here. John, good evening, sir. How are you?
Freezing, as are you.
Yes.
This winter storm that seems to have covered the entirety of America, that has dumped snow everywhere. We got an unfathomable 2 inches of snow here the other day in New York, a city where famously it never snows.
Yep. Never sleeps.
Never sleeps, never snows. You know, but we're survivors. We're tough. We are New York strong. Hashtag New York strong. We will survive in this apocalypse of cold weather and gusty wind. We're doing okay.
But you have to trek out. But I will say the one of the bright spots though when you're in New York is that you can just walk out and you're not apartment locked because the roads are bad. You can go step out and hit the grocery store if you need to, or go get some stuff.
Yeah, the downside of that is to go anywhere, you just have to go outside. You know, you can't really. You know, one of the things I like, I miss about a home is having stuff like storage space, so you can stock up on things and not have to go outside. Whereas here, it's like, you know, hey, I only have as much food as can basically fit in my fridge, and that's really it. So, but look, it's cold. It's not as cold as the hot stove, which has just completely iced over. But it's to paraphrase Michael Irvin, man, when we were out in that cold, it was cold.
I never thought we would be paraphrasing Michael Irvin on this very show.
Poet Laureate of America, Michael Irvin.
And also a lot of interesting stories. I remember reading Jeff Pearlman's Cowboys book. Did you ever read that?
No, but I know that there are many, many Michael Irvin stories in there about what an absolutely crazy dude he was. He and Charles Haley, who apparently was like a just borderline psychopath. As I think like every 90s NFL team was required to have at least one dude who you were like, oh, he's completely mentally unbalanced. Like he shouldn't be allowed in polite society because he's just a violent person. Let's put him to use here in this gladiator combat.
Gladiator combat. Sounds like something.
It was kind of something.
Gladiator combat. Jon Tayler.
Yes.
The stove is cold.
It's frozen.
But Jordan Hicks arises. So a phoenix arises with a cold stove. The starting career of Jordan Hicks rising from the ashes here.
Potentially.
This is fascinating, I think, for the Giants. I mean, you obviously have Robbie Ray, who we talked about last week, coming down the pike here in August, July, somewhere around there. But you bring in Jordan Hicks, and Jordan Hicks has had a really weird MLB career to this point. Probably not gone the way that Jordan Hicks thought it was going to go. Probably not the way that the teams that have signed and developed Jordan Hicks thought it was going to go to this point. But we're going to give this a go again, and the plan is for him to be a starter for the San Francisco Giants in 2024. John, do you believe that that's still a realistic proposition and a worthy gamble for San Francisco? And is this something that changes how you look at the Giants going into 2024?
Well, I definitely agree it's a gamble, because anytime you have a guy who, like Hicks, has been primarily a reliever, not just primarily a reliever throughout his career, but also someone who the Cardinals tried as a starter and got very little out of before pushing him back to the bullpen. You know, like the odds of this working out, I don't think are particularly high, and that I think, in particular, because with Hicks, there's a few things with him. One, you always worry about, I think, the injury stuff. He's not had very good arm health in the past, particularly when he was pushed to be a starter. Obviously, the workload for a starter is so much heavier than it is for a reliever. Having to get through a lineup at least twice, having to, throw more in the neighborhood of at least somewhere in the 70, 75 pitches to get through. He's never really developed a particularly good third pitch. It's really just been heat and the occasion and sliders from him, which has worked out okay. I think what's interesting about Hicks is he was one of those guys really kind of in that huge velocity period where it was like, this dude throws 101 miles an hour without even trying, like he should be striking out 15 dudes in a game or per 9 or whatever it is. And it never really has played out that way for Jordan Hicks. I'm curious to see, and I think a large part of whether or not this will work for the Giants, beyond whether or not Hicks can stay healthy, is whether or not they can figure out some kind of third pitch or offering for him, particularly something that would be useful against left-handers. Because as a right-handed reliever, you could shield him pretty decently from lefties. Not a guy whose stuff necessarily plays super great against lefties. For the most part, he's had it's mostly been his sinker. He's thrown a four-seamer to lefties. He's got the sweeper. We'll see. I think what's going to be, again, like I said, interesting to watch is what they do with his arsenal, what they do with, do they let him just air it out? Do they tell him put some more in the tank? And so you're going from a guy who throws 100 to maybe more like 95, 96. We'll see. But what I find particularly interesting about Hicks isn't so much what he does for the Giants, because I don't think this materially changes anything for the Giants, unless they somehow manage to, and there is precedent for this, they did something similar to this with Kevin Gausman, who left Baltimore as a reliever, came to San Francisco. They put him back into the starting rotation. He figured something out with him. He went on to become a legit number one pitcher, which is he was with San Francisco for a little bit, and then now with Toronto. I don't think Hicks. I think part of the problem with Hicks is he doesn't have as good a secondary pitch as Gausman's splitter. But regardless, they do have some history with this. They do have some success with it. But I think it says a lot in particular about where the starting pitcher is going in the greater game of baseball. And this is something we've seen over the last, really, particularly the last 10 years, but even going back now, maybe even a little bit longer, the role of the starter, the importance of the starter, and the emphasis on the starter, all of those have been lessened over time. You particularly see it in the playoffs because of the atmosphere there, where and some of this too is the fact that the third time through the order penalty is just a real, applicable, inescapable fact. There is just no way around that one, particularly when it comes to the postseason. Managers want to avoid that. But I think when, the goal with Hicks almost certainly is not going to be he's going to throw 150 plus innings. I really struggle to see how they're going to get that to happen, considering that, you look at Jordan Hicks's career. He has never thrown more, at least as a major leaguer, not looking at the minor leagues. His career high in innings as a major leaguer is 77 and 2/3. Back in 2018, his rookie season, no starts made. I don't think realistically he threw 65 and 2/3 innings last year. Best case scenario is you're probably doubling that. So you're looking for 120 to 130 innings. I think similarly, you're not.
How many starts is that?
This is the other part of it is I don't think you're expecting either that Hicks is a guy who's going to give you more than 5 innings to start. I think your hope is that he turns over a lineup twice. Maybe you can get him through the top of the lineup a third time before you have to go to your bullpen or play matchups or whatever. But I that's the thing. Let's say 5 innings a turn over 120 innings. That amounts to 24 starts. That's not a full part of a rotation. Most rotations, the regular starters are putting up 28, 29, 30, up to 32, 33, maybe even 35 starts, depending on how much they're needed. But I think what you're seeing, and you especially can see it, I think, with the way that the Giants have constructed their depth chart, which is, they have Logan Webb atop their rotation, and then a lot of guys where it feels like they may just only try to get 4, 5, maybe 6 innings out of them. Like Ross Stripling, Kyle Harrison, now Hicks, Keaton Wynn. These are not guys I think the Giants particularly expect to throw a lot of innings. I mean, Webb threw 216 innings last year. The next highest innings total in that current projected starting rotation is Stripling with 89. And I don't really see any way he's similarly a guy who, a reliever in the past, been used as a swingman. I don't see how he gets over 120, even with a full-time defined starting role. I think what we're getting to a point, and this is something where I think, like I said, the last 10 years have really shown it, but I think it especially picked up with the Rays adopting the opener process and using bulk starters, is that more and more starters are now going to be this more kind of bulk 3 to 4 inning, maybe 5, almost like a swingman type, where you essentially build a rotation with more options who throw fewer innings. You use more of your bullpen. You have more optionable guys. You have more guys like Hicks, who you're thinking, okay, if he can keep his stuff up 2 times through the order, the bullpen can handle the rest. We have more than enough lower leverage, kind of high usage guys that I think, you look at the Giants, maybe that's Tristan Beck, maybe that's Sean Jelly, maybe that's Eric Miller, and I think we're very much at a point where beyond the top like 20 starters in baseball, top 20 to 30, I don't know if we're really going to see starters get developed the same way, where the teams aren't necessarily going to be aiming for the 180 to 200 inning workhorse. If that happens, if you just end up with a Clayton Kershaw, by a miracle, great, you'll take it. But I think teams are adapting better said, more to a reality where your rotation is maybe one guy who can give you 180 plus innings, and then you just fill in the rest as best you can. Because it just seems like, I guess it's one of two things. Either there is simply not enough pitching anymore in baseball, or there's not enough emphasis being placed on being able to get a guy to carry a full starter's workload, or that's just not important anymore. And teams are kind of just at this point reorganizing how they want to use a rotation, and whether or not it just becomes essentially one giant bullpen. I guess that would be my take for the week. Is we're heading toward a future where MLB pitching staffs are just one giant bullpen, where the roles the roles between starter and reliever get more and more blurred till there's really no differentiation at all. Where you have a guy like Hicks, who, nominally he is a starter, but he may only throw 3 or 4 innings. And then you might hand the ball off to a guy who gives you 2 innings, to another guy who gives you another inning, and another inning, and another inning. We've wondered, I think, and for what it's worth, the playoff or postseason strategy of you get your starter through the lineup 2 times and you hand it off to a million 1-inning arm guys, the Braves strategy that they've used to pretty good effect. That's not a realistic option for a 162 game season. You will burn through too many arms. Someone will get hurt. You need to have the depth capable of having a guy who can go through a lineup at least twice, ideally 3 times, or at the very least give you 5 innings, whichever comes first. But I do think we're seeing teams continue to lower that bar as to what does a starter need to do in today's game. And I think with Hicks, it really is just going to be give us 4 or 5 innings and we'll let the bullpen ideally take care of the rest. And I don't know, maybe the Giants have hopes that Hicks can be a more traditional 180 inning plus guy, and however much he pitches this year is just a beginning of a rebuilding program, so to speak, to get him back up to that height. But I also wouldn't be surprised if something like this doesn't just become more and more of the norm. Where instead of, you go out and you give your big contract to a Blake Snell or a Jordan Montgomery, you instead say, why don't we just give a third of that money or half that money or whatever, or take that money and split it up amongst 3 guys and build essentially a starter and a half out of them. Is that a good strategy? I don't know. Where we've seen it play out to success with the Rays, but they're also Magic. We've seen other teams struggle more with that. But I do think we're at a point where the role of the starting pitcher is fundamentally changing. And I think you can see that in what Jordan Hicks is getting. And I wouldn't be surprised if, and obviously it depends on how Hicks performs this year and going forward for the length of that contract. But I wouldn't be surprised if this is something we end up seeing more and more too, particularly when you consider that pitchers in free agency, starting pitchers in free agency, you're almost never going to get a guy in the peak of, or what you would be considered the peak of his career. Blake Snell hit free agency at 30. Jordan Montgomery, I believe, is 29, 31 actually, sorry. The one starter who was available in free agency this offseason under the age of 30, or the top starter, I should say, under the age of 30, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, he got his big deal, obviously, because he is a top 15 global talent. But I think more likely, when you have a guy like Blake Snell available in the market for as talented as he is, I think teams are now having that reflexive feel of, do we really want to commit a 10th of our payroll, or more than that, better said, I guess, a 5th of our entire annual payroll to one dude to throw 180 innings? Or do we want to commit half of that money to 3 guys who can combined throw 300 innings or something along those lines? Again, we'll have to wait to see how it plays out, but I do wonder if Hicks essentially presages some kind of significant change in the way things go forward. Again, we've already been seeing it happen, the way the starter has been diminished. Again, the Rays with the opener and the bulk reliever strategy have, really spurred things forward in that direction. But I'm curious now what that's going to look like in free agency, because I think this will be a pretty major shift going forward.
And it's funny because I think about college baseball too. This is not happening on the college level, John. Like, these arms, they're going. Like, Paul Skeens is like, hey, man, if I need to throw 9 innings to win a title for my LSU Tigers, I'm going to do it. If Tennessee has to send these guys in for crazy amounts of pitches, they're just going to do it. And I wonder if that permeates down because of where things are headed.
And that's an interesting debate too, because what we're seeing with college and Major League Baseball, college baseball, or the NCAA and Major League Baseball, is you are seeing some of those some threads.
They're starting to work a lot more together now than it seems like they have in years past.
And I think Wes Johnson going to LSU is probably one of those kind of watershed moments for, oh, this is something that would never have happened in the past.
Yeah.
An MLB coach leaving or a guy leaving an MLB coaching position to take a college coaching position, even if it is head coach of one of the best programs in the country. That's still most people, I think, if that happened 10 years ago, most people would have said that's a huge step down. But, you've started to see not just the personnel, but also the ideas that are starting to go back and forth. I do wonder because, college baseball has always had the Friday starter, the Saturday starter. You have your two guys at the top of the rotation. But I do wonder if, in a sense, almost Major League Baseball is starting to emulate that. If Major League Baseball teams are just going to say, essentially, we have our Friday guy, we have our Saturday guy, and then the rest of the pitching staff fills in as needed.
Yeah.
And it certainly seems like that's how things have operated in the postseason for a lot of teams. I think we saw, and I think the postseason you still do need that third starter. We saw the one of the big problems with Atlanta is they just did not have that third starter behind Spencer Strider and Max Fried, and they certainly have made moves this offseason to try to do better than Bryce Elder as a third starter. I think similarly with the Phillies, with Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler, but then not as much of a step down to Ranger Suarez as it was for Atlanta to Bryce Elder, but similarly, not having that kind of reliable third start. I think the Diamondbacks had ran into similar issues going from Zach Gallen to Merrill Kelly to Brandon Pfaadt, although Pfaadt I think actually probably outpitched Kelly, but regardless. But I do wonder if that's something where we are just going to get to a point that rotations for the most part have one or two guys, like I said, who are the kind of aces of your staff, and then everyone else just fills in as needed when possible, with varying roles or starters who only throw a few innings. And look, I don't follow college baseball closely, as you may or may not know.
For now,
John,
every year I get you a little bit more in the
I get this much closer. The third starter on a college baseball team's rotation, how many innings do they throw in their given starts usually?
Well, it depends. So, Tennessee was unique last year because they had three legitimate MLB first-round arms, and Drew Beam, Chase Burns, and Chase Dollander. So they could go long. Dollander, obviously, or Burns kind of imploded early on in the year, and then he moved to the bullpen and was electric and was just unhittable for their road to Omaha. But you put in Andrew Lindsay, he moved to the Friday night spot, and he was going 6-7. I mean, I would say the majority were going 6 at minimum.
Okay.
But I don't think that's the norm across college baseball.
Yeah, I guess I'd be curious to know is how many college teams are already doing something where it's top guy goes 6 or 7, second guy goes 6 or 7. But after that, if you can just get us to 5, you're golden. We'll take care of it from there.
And they do too. They have a Tuesday night game, which I don't know if you're familiar with, which is Tony Vitello here. He just used that as a kind of, I mean, it's brutal if you're covering Tennessee baseball on a Tuesday night because you're playing nobody. It's like an Xavier. It's just a tune-up game. They come in for a buy-in game, and Tennessee wins 24-5, whatever. And
sometimes.
Yeah, there's some brutal scores I can send you from Tennessee baseball on Tuesday nights. But run rules very we're just all right, let's end it after 7. But you try out a bunch of different arms and see where everybody's at. So you just plug in 8, 9, 10 different guys, and you're just doing a hodgepodge. And whoever's starting on Tuesday is never going to be a weekend starter guy during the year. Yeah, it's just a totally different world.
Well, and that's kind of what it feels like where Major League Baseball is to a certain degree going is, maybe that the equivalent of the Tuesday night starter is a guy like Jordan Hicks, where it's he's not going to start a postseason game for the Giants unless something goes completely bonkers. Although it's a good question at this point for the Giants, who actually would start that postseason game. But I don't think that's a thing Giants fans are going to have to worry about because I don't think Hicks makes any real difference in them being a postseason team or not. I think they're still probably too far back in the NL West race and the NL Wild.
You say that, but we did not see the Diamondbacks coming this year.
No, but we still felt, I think, that there was some real dark horse potential to the Diamondbacks, whereas you look at the Giants and you go, there's not a lot of depth here and there's not a lot of ceiling. I think they're missing particularly some of the ceiling that the Diamondbacks do. But regardless, I do wonder if that's kind of where we're going. Is you have your two top guys, and then it's more of we'll get this guy who can give us 4 or 5, or we'll just do bullpen games semi-regularly. And I don't know that can really work in the regular season because 162 games is a lot of games. You're covering, what is that math? 162 times at least, or times 9. You're covering 1,458 innings over the course of a season. Divide that up amongst 13 guys. That's still 110 innings apiece, and a lot of relievers are just simply not going to get to those numbers. The relievers with the highest innings totals, by and large, they're not getting above 75, 80. We're talking about pure relievers. So you're still going to need guys who can give you at least 120 innings. But I imagine that maybe that's just what MLB teams are starting to set the cap at, which is if a guy can give us at least 120 innings, that's fine, as long as they're 120 quality innings, as opposed to maybe something like more akin to a Lucas Giolito of 180 innings, but the 60 beyond of 120 are mediocre to bad. It's an interesting strategy, is what the division of innings and the responsibilities therein are going to look like. Because I think that is something that is changing at a fundamental level in the game in a way that we've seen it gradually change, because obviously there are no longer, we're not seeing guys throw 20 complete games a season anymore, or doing the kind of things that like Madison Bumgarner did in the 2014 postseason. We've already started to see that, but this really does feel like we're seeing a pronounced league-wide shift in how innings are divided up between starters and relievers, and whether or not there even will be differentiations like starter or reliever going forward.
We shall see, John, but it is something to monitor, and Jon Tayler might be onto something here. But
I occasionally come up with decent points.
Not occasionally, pretty
Every
often, John. That's why you're on the podcast every week. You're one of my favorite and smartest baseball minds out there today, John. Marcus Stroman. The Yankees bring in Stroman, sticking with the starting pitching market. What do you make of the Yankees ultimately going with Stroman over taking a more expensive, maybe better gamble on a Jordan Montgomery or Blake Snell here?
Yeah, and it's funny to talk about Stroman now because he's pretty much the antithesis to what I was talking about. Because Stroman is your set it and forget it, 150 plus innings, third starter. You don't worry about him in that sense. If Hicks is a potentially high ceiling, low floor gamble, Stroman is more of a high floor kind of middle ceiling gamble. I think it makes sense for the Yankees because they let go of a lot of their starting pitching depth in the Juan Soto trade, in sending, I think it was 5 players ultimately in total to San Diego, most of the 4 of them pitchers. So between that and the loss of Luis Severino, the loss of Domingo Germán, that rotation got thinned out pretty badly this offseason. I think Stroman is a good safeguard against having to use too many rookie guys, or against having to try to flounder around for some quad A off the wire arms. And I think it is a more sensible financial move than a Blake Snell. I think the difference here is if the Yankees were not, one, already committed to paying Carlos Rodon a considerable sum of money for the next few seasons, and 2, presumably already talking to Scott Boras about what a Juan Soto extension would look like, or at least trying to figure out what the numbers for that might look like, on top of the money they owe Aaron Judge and the money they owe Garrett Cole, and et cetera, so on and so forth. Maybe there would have been room for a guy like Snell, but I have to imagine that that Brian Cashman probably felt better with the cheaper, yet to some degree more consistent alternative in Stroman than taking the big risk on Snell. And I think it makes sense for where the Yankees rotation is, because they don't really need that number 1 type starter. They already have one in Garrett Cole, and you could argue they have another in Carlos Rodon if Rodon is healthy. What they needed were those consistent, stable innings, 5 to 6 innings at a time per start from Stroman, who I think the thing you worry about with Stroman, he's not a strikeout guy. He had a walk rate spike last year that didn't come with any additional strikeouts, so that's got to be a little concerning. But he's still one of the premier ground ball guys in the big leagues. I'm not crazy about the Yankees' defensive infield, but I think it's good enough to make him work. And he's I think the Marcus Stroman fun fact that always goes around is he has never once put up a FIP above 4 in his career. Every single season on aggregate, his FIP has been below 4. He has a career ERA of 3.65, a career FIP of 3.63. He's pretty much always bang on with his peripherals. And, for as much as, again, that doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of, Marcus Stroman's not an exciting signing. He's not a guy who takes a team from would-be contender to full-on contender. He's not a signing that takes a would-be title contender into a favorite, but he is a guy who provides stability. Ideally, he's a guy who provides who gives you the flexibility to kind of let your younger arms continue to develop instead of having to rush the bigs. And I think, again, financially for the Yankees, it makes more sense to have a short-term, smaller commitment to a guy like Stroman than it is to try to make a long-term deal with Snell work or a long-term deal with Jordan Montgomery. The rumor going around was that the Yankees offered Snell something like $5,150 and didn't hear anything, so they pivoted to Stroman. Maybe if they'd waited out a little longer, Snell might have dropped into something like, okay, I'll do like a $390 or something and do a short-term high AAV deal. But I think
but
the
isn't
Yankees
Stroman a sneaky better? It's so weird to say this, but safer 3-year play than Blake Snell.
He's 100% safer.
Yeah.
He's a 100% safer play, and I think especially given that the free agent pitching market beyond him, and leaving Snell and Montgomery out of it for now, the free agent pitching market beyond that's left now with Stroman gone and those two aside is pretty weak. Now you're down to the Mike Clevenger, Michael Lorenzen. I don't even know who comes after that. Mike, is Zach Greinke if he wants to come at James Paxton, Matt Boyd, Rich Hill if he's still trying to pitch. Like the market on starters beyond the top two guys is pretty much done at this point. Stroman was the last best option left that wasn't one of those two guys. So I think, again, especially for a Yankees team that needed, I think, another established starter, definitely had to add someone. I think Stroman was the best bet they could have made. So I like it for New York for the most part. I think obviously the X factor too is Stroman is a little bit of a character. Certainly, he has a reputation, obviously, for being a very high intensity, high energy guy. I think kind of in the same mold as a Josh Donaldson, where that can be a great thing sometimes, but that can also wear on guys other times. I think there's a real pronounced chip on Stroman's shoulder that again is a plus and also can definitely be a minus. But hopefully for the Yankees, it that works out and that Stroman stays on his best behavior. And I think that should work out because I think particularly pitching for a contending team, pitching for in a big market, pitching for a storied franchise, I think is the kind of thing that a guy like Marcus Stroman would really want and appreciate. So again, it's a bet. It's not a risk-free bet. There's no such thing, but I think it's as safe a choice as the Yankees could have made if they weren't going to go the Snell Montgomery route. And for what it's worth, it seems like they never were going to.
And I wonder how much of it stemmed from the Carlos Rodon situation from last year.
I think that if they didn't have Rodon on the books, they might have been more inclined to go after a guy like Snell. But especially with how little they got out of Rodon last year, how bad he was, there probably has to be that worry of like, look, we might be on the hook for a lot of money to a guy who is simply not going to be worth it. Now
we can't do that with him and Blake Snell, who people with you're in contract hell.
That's a chips all in push that I would expect more from a team like, I don't know. I mean, I could still see like a Texas maybe just randomly jumping in there and being like, Blake Snell, how would you like 5 years and $150 million?
Yeah, I mean, they just won a World Series and got nothing from Jacob deGrom.
Money's not real in Texas, so
no.
Although I guess the argument in Texas instead is, well, we've got Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer, and Tyler Mahle coming back at some point in the second half. What do we need starters for? We can get through the first half of the season with.
Well, hold on.
Nate Eovaldi and Andrew Heaney.
Jacob deGrom.
No, and look, I'm not saying that the Rangers should do that. I just
are there people still doing that in 2024? Are there Rangers fans right now, like they're texting their buddies? They're like, dude, I cannot wait for Jacob deGrom to be ready to go come September.
There are always going to be people doing the second half return from injury guy is as good as any trade deadline addition, and that person is named Mike Elias, or any GM, honestly. Look, Craig Breslow is going to be doing the same thing with. Although that implies that they're actually good Red Sox pitchers just waiting on the injured list when that is just straight up not the case. But hey, that's a topic for a whole other podcast.
Go Sox.
Yeah. Go Red Sox.
Why or why not, Jon Tayler, Evan Carter ends up winning Rookie of the Year in 2024?
I mean, I think it's as good a case as any. I mean, I don't. Looking the easiest way I find for Rookie of the Year stuff. Well, no, because I was going to say Yamamoto's in the NL. I think NL Rookie of the Year is probably a pretty safe bet. That's Yoshinobu Yamamoto.
Yeah,
but if you look at and I'm using Fangraphs board, look at the 2023 updated. here are the guys I think in the AL who, presuming they get the call at some point, if they either start the year with the team or get called up at some point later in the year, will probably be part of that conversation. Jackson Holliday for sure. And I think that's probably the biggest competition with Carter for just at least offseason favorites for AL Rookie of the Year. I guarantee Holliday will come up at some point in the season. He is too good to spend the entire year in the minors, barring injury. He has been phenomenal so far in the minor leagues, so that's one to keep an eye on. I think similarly, Junior Caminero in Tampa Bay, with it looking like Wander Franco is never going to play Major League Baseball again. The Rays are, I assume, going to be trying every possible option they have in the left side of the infield to help fill that spot. I don't think Caminero is going to be the starting shortstop. I don't think he has the defensive chops to do it, but I think he's certainly going to get plenty of playing time. And here's the other name I find really intriguing. The other guy who might cut into Carter's Rookie of the Year potential, one of his own future teammates, Florida's own Wyatt Langford. Who, it's funny, I'm always going to be doing this. Fangraphs just ran its 2024 ZiPS projections for the Texas Rangers. And I just want to note that ZiPS, the projection system, very, very high on Wyatt Langford. His projected stat line, 599 plate appearances, a 264, 324, 489 line, a 122 OPS plus, and a weighted on-base average of 346, adds up to 2.5 wins above replacement. He actually projects for a slightly higher WAR, WOBA, and OPS plus than Evan Carter. I think, and they're probably, I guess it turned into more of a Carter Langford Texas Rangers thing. They're going to get there in different directions. Carter is more of a patient hitter, as we saw during the postseason, a fantastic eye at the plate. Langford is a big time power guy with just tools out the wazoo. You can argue as to which gives you the higher ceiling theoretically. I mean, Carter, I think that with Carter, the bet is that the floor will probably be higher. There's less boom bust with him, whereas Langford is maybe a little bit of a riskier prospect or project. But I think certainly, look, I don't expect Carter to be as good as he was in his short stint with Texas last year. I mean, you look at the numbers he put up, which I'm just pulling up right now. A 412 batting average on balls in play, that's not going to happen again, and you can see it reflected in the expected stats too. He posted a weighted on base average in, and this also tiny sample size, 75 plate appearances of 435. The StatCast expected stats figure that's closer to, should have been closer to 3, or would have projected or expected a 339 WOBA. And look, there's plenty of good in there. The exit velocities are good. The barrel rates are good. The hard hit rate is good. Like I said, the plate discipline is good. But, he's still, he doesn't turn 22 until late August. There's still going to be a lot of adjustments he's going to make. You can see how the way pitchers adjusted to him over the course of the postseason, started attacking him more down and away with breaking balls. He's going to have to learn how to lay off those pitches, how to do optimal damage on that kind of stuff. But I think as of right now, and again, without knowing what the Orioles are planning to do with Holliday, assuming that Caminero doesn't really have a consistent playing time spot, and assuming that the Rangers don't call up Langford right away, I feel like Carter is probably your AL Rookie of the Year favorite. Who knows? Again, there are plenty of other names I could mention here. Ricky Tiedemann for the Blue Jays, who I think will probably play a big role with them. Potentially Kobe Mayo with the Orioles as well.
So you're going Kobe Mayo over Jackson Holliday?
No, I think if you want it 1, 2, 3, I think it'd be Carter, Holliday, and let's go with Langford over Caminero. But I think Mayo is a guy who, actually probably not Mayo, but
where does Mayo play?
He is a outfielder.
Okay.
So
they brought back Cedric Mullins. I'm just trying to figure out the path, because that's the other part of this too, is you got to figure out paths forward and where they would fit. And
I think with Baltimore it's a little harder to find outfield spots than it would be for a guy like Holliday just to take over shortstop full time. So I think that is just going to happen.
Speaking of Holliday, you want a crazy stat from Baseball America?
I love crazy stats.
Okay. There are 13 MLB teams, and JJ Cooper has this great MLB writer over there at Baseball America. And he said there are 13 MLB teams who have never had a prospect ranked number 1 on Baseball America's top 100 prospect list in the 35-year history. Mm-hmm. The Orioles have 3 in a row now, John.
Unreal. What they've done with that farm system is absolutely unreal.
It's unprecedented. And so there's only been 4 teams that have had 3 or more number 1 prospects ever. The Braves have had 6. Go Braves. Orioles and Rays have had 4 now, and the Twins have had 3. There have been multiple players who led top 100 prospect lists in back-to-back years. Andrew Jones, Joe Mauer. So this is why this is important too. The names who lead these lists: Andrew Jones, Joe Mauer, Bryce Harper, Wander Franco. Obviously, is a little bit different now for very bad reasons. JD Drew was actually number 1 in 99.
People forget, not to turn this into old man remembers, but people forget.
Here is the JD Drew hour here for Jon Tayler.
Good JD Drew was as an amateur player.
Mm-hmm.
Just a phenomenal player. Really cannot stress that enough.
No, I mean, JD Drew is, I think it's just like for me too. I was older. I was young when he was, so 8 years old when he's at number 1 on that list. So I only know old JD Drew, where it's just right field, just raked a little bit and could barely move and just nice little power bat in the 6 hole. But I just think it's crazy that Adley Rutschman, obviously number 1 in 2022, Gunnar Henderson, number 1 in 2023, and now Jackson Holliday, number 1 in 2024. So the list, when you look at who have made the cut and who had, like Jackson Holliday, go ahead and buy the stock. Like the Orioles are going to go 3 for 3 and multi-time All-Stars and everything else. It's really unbelievable what they're churning out here without the misses over the last couple of years in Baltimore.
Yeah, and just imagine if they've been able to add some pitching to that pipeline. I mean, I know one of those.
What if, John?
I know one of those guys, obviously highly ranked, is Grayson Rodriguez, but
didn't go well last year.
No, and some of that's the adjustment, but I think, and some of this too is like, Baltimore lucked into a number 1 pick when a generational catcher was available, and then lucked into both a top 2 pick when seemingly another generational talent was available, and for Arizona to take the other superstar kid or son of a big leaguer instead of the first superstar son of a big leaguer. It's also fun to think that Matt Holliday has another probably as good, if not better, son coming in the wake of Jake. Yes, Jackson Holliday's brother, whose name I'm looking up because I don't remember it off the top of my head.
Better be Cash Holliday. What is it?
Ethan Holliday. He is 16 years old. He is already starting to rise up prospective draft and prospect rankings. Matt Holliday did right with his kids, man. He is building an absolute dynasty out of his own loins. Wait, so
he wasn't so bad himself either.
Who were the number 1 players for the Braves beyond Andrew Jones and Chipper Jones?
So that's 2. Acuna,
that makes sense.
I'm doing.
But do you not have it in front of you?
No, I'm guessing right now. I'm guessing who else would have been. So it's 3 for 30 years. Hold on, I'm gonna get this. Tommy Hansen probably wasn't number 1.
Womp womp.
But I'm thinking Ty Hansen was up there. There's a lot of hype back in the day for him. Medlin, I wouldn't say. I'm trying to think of any pitchers. I guess probably not pitchers. I'm thinking no for call. No. Oh, Freddie Freeman?
I found the list. Okay. It's
okay.
So Chipper Jones, Andrew Jones, who did it twice.
Okay.
Ronald Acuna. So we got those 3. Jason Hayward.
Oh, forgot Hayward.
Yeah.
Forgot Hayward.
And I want to give you 3 guesses to get the last one. I'll be stunned if you get it.
Okay.
I would never have guessed.
Is he a pitcher or a position player?
A pitcher.
And I didn't say Medlin or Hansen. It's not one of those.
It's not one of the young guys, Medlin, Hansen, or Brandon Beachy. None of those dudes.
None of those dudes.
Okay. Yeah.
So what year time frame? This is cheating a little bit.
Early 90s.
Oh. Okay. Denny Nagel?
No.
Not Mark Wool. Kevin Millwood?
Nope.
Kerry Lightenberg.
I was waiting for you to say Kerry Lightenberg. It's not Kerry Lightenberg, but I did just want to have a let's remember some Kerry Lightenberg.
Yeah, Mike Remlinger.
Steve Avery.
Oh my God, Steve Avery.
Avery.
Goodness gracious.
It's amazing that list is one existing Hall of Famer, one potential Hall of Famer, a guy in Acuna who, if things continue as is, will be a Hall of Famer. A guy in Hayward who, for a very short period of time there, looked like a future Hall of Famer, and Steve Avery.
It's a good list.
I don't think anything better illustrates the variance of prospects than having that be the spread of number 1 guys.
No.
Or I mean, you can even look at the fact that one of the Orioles' number one guys was Matt Wieters.
Yeah, and he was solid. Like, he didn't have a Hall of Fame great, but he was solid.
He was fine. He was. I think it would have been very funny if the universe with Adley Rutschman had just done Wieters 2.0 and just given the Orioles the exact same outcome. But
I think Orioles fans would have been okay with that. Like, Wieters was good.
Yeah, I mean, I think he
didn't live up to the hype, but Wieters was good.
Well, that's the thing about
you got to look at it this way. You could have been a Bart situation, and it was not a Bart situation.
He could have been Matt Clement. Yeah, there are way worse ways that could have gone. But I think that's the thing with having a number one prospect is how do you manage that hype of, this guy was named a number one prospect, and instead he turned out to be a perfectly fine MLB regular who, I mean, Matt Wieters finished with a career wins above replacement Baseball Reference version of 18.3. It's fine. It's not great.
I feel like he retired young. What was his age?
He retired after his age 34 season, which was the pandemic shortened season.
Okay.
So
I mean, you look at that long.
What's that?
Didn't go that long. Like, he didn't have like a crazy long career behind the plate. He didn't really transition. He had a bat where you could have seen him early on, like maybe not do the first base Joe Mauer thing, but still probably could have. I don't know. You could have seen, even with the B+ solid career, him just hang around for a long time.
Sure, but I mean, just keep in mind that 18.3 wins above replacement, that is significantly less than, among others, Carlos Guillen, Grady Sizemore, Denard Span, Jose Quintana, Paul Konerko, Baltimore's favorite, J.J. Hardy, Sixto Lizcano, Josh Hamilton finishing with fewer career wins above replacement than Melvin Mora is just... Wow. That is a fun stat right there.
Melvin Mora.
Yeah, that's a name we haven't... Speaking of Orioles favorites from bygone days, that's... Matt Wieters finished with 10 wins fewer in his career than Tim McCarver did, although Tim McCarver played for 21 seasons, so that's maybe not entirely fair. Brandon Phillips outwarred him. Vernon Wells outwarred him. I don't want to turn this into the let's crap on Matt Wieters hour, but it's being a number one prospect is rough, man, because those expectations are very, very high, and some guys meet them, and some guys finish with a career about half as valuable as Carlos Guillen's did. So, or was rather.
There you go. Jon Tayler, final thing here as we wrap up this edition of the pod. Buy or sell? The Diamondbacks are in a position to win more regular season games than they did a year ago.
That's a tough one. I'm gonna cheat a little and use and go to we again, because Fangraphs has the Zips projections for the Diamondbacks, and Dan Szymborski, the Zips maestro, ballpark
that we find out his name is part of the Zips that I did not realize because I'm a dummy, and I'm just doing Zips for years, John, and it just never came together.
It's not called Zips Borski. It should be. I'm going to pitch that to him. Dan ballparked this current Arizona roster at about 84 to 88 wins. They finished last year, 84 wins?
I think that's right.
87? I should probably look it up. Did they
get to 87?
Let's find out together. The 2023 Diamondbacks went 84 and 78. So
I was going to say, I didn't think they got 87 sounded high.
I think I'll take the over on that. I mean... Part of it is this was a relatively healthy team last year. Like, they got full seasons out of Ketel Marte, Christian Walker, Lourdes Gurriel Jr., Corbin Carroll, who played 155 games. Really the only, the guys that didn't play as much were not really guys I think they were counting on necessarily. And similarly, pitching-wise, they got 210 innings out of Zach Gallen, 177 innings out of Merrill Kelly. That's pretty much as you would have hoped and expected for them. I think the big thing with the Diamondbacks where that difference has to be made up is the rotation. So I think Eddie Rodriguez alone plus a better Brandon Pfaadt probably is enough to get them over 84 wins. Similarly, I think going from Evan Longoria to Eugenio Suarez at third base is probably a good sized bump. I think having a little more Gabriel Moreno in the monitors is probably a good thing. I think I'll take the over probably, and also a full season of Paul Sewald to make up for the Diamondbacks bullpen, which for the most of the year was just kind of a train wreck, but is still not particularly good right now. I'll take the over, but not by a significant amount. I can see this team finishing like 86, 87 wins maybe if everything shakes out. But yeah, I don't think the Diamondbacks have made that big jump. And granted, I don't know that they were in the position to. You could argue that they probably should have, coming off of an NL pennant win and a World Series appearance. Ideally, you'd like to have seen them have a bigger offseason than Eddie Rodriguez and bringing back Lourdes Gurriel Jr. But at the same time, I think they have a solid roster. I think there's probably the feeling that maybe last year was a little early and that this core hasn't really even come together necessarily. I would love to see if they'd make a play for like a Blake Snell. I think that would be a really fascinating one. Otherwise, you look at where they're kind of projected to be a little light. I think maybe a better bat at the DH spot. I think a guy like a Brandon Belt would make a lot of sense there. Maybe bring JD Martinez back to Arizona. Similarly, again, the bullpen could probably use some bolstering. I don't know that they don't really make sense for Josh Hader, given that they already have Sewald in place. But there's certainly, I think, room to add there beyond having Sewald and Kevin the Gink Ginkel. I think it's a little thin beyond those two guys. But overall, I mean, this is a very solid roster that I think is pretty comfortably in that better than 500 territory. So I'll be an optimist for the Diamondbacks. Let's take the over on their 2024 wins, finishing ahead of 2023.
I think it's down to how you feel about the Padres bouncing back, because the Padres had the season from hell last year, and AJ did not tear it down. They're still you move on from Juan Soto, but there's still a lot of talent on this roster.
I worry that they haven't really done anything to they needed to replace Soto in some capacity or another. Yeah. And they have not done that. That simply just has not happened.
They could also really bring back Blake Snell.
I just don't see it, because there's just too much. A lot of what I think the Padres were doing was just tied up in we have so many big future commitments to Tatis, to Manny Machado, to Joe Musgrove, to Yu Darvish, to who am I forgetting in there?
Matt Waldron.
Knuckleballer Supreme, Matt Waldron. I think part of the thinking with San Diego is we cannot take on any more of these big deals. The large part of why they moved Soto, because I think there was probably a feeling that we're not going to re-sign him, so we need to get something back for him. I would think for Arizona, I don't necessarily think the problem is going to come from within the division, because I don't think much of the Giants or Padres, and certainly the Rockies, are going to be a mess. I think it's more, does the NL Central being a little bit better next year? Because I expect the Cardinals to be better. I expect the Reds to be better. I expect the Brewers to be about where they were, and the Cubs probably about where they were as well. Does that make the NL wild card a little tighter? Similarly, a lot of this, I think, hinges too on what the Mets are going to do and what the Mets are going to look like. Are they going to commit to, this is not really a contending season, even if we end up in a maybe contending position, we're not going to go crazy or go all out? Similarly, what can the Marlins do? What can what is it going to look like for? And I think that's probably where the Padres and the Giants come into play. But I feel pretty good that the Diamondbacks are probably the second place team in the NL West, pretty comfortably. But I think at the end of the day, though, that still just adds up to a wild card spot. So, and I think that's why I feel like for them, maybe a slightly more aggressive offseason, because they are in that place where every single additional win is going to be so important to them that they want to maximize every chance this roster has. Particularly when you get into the fact that, beyond, obviously they already got Corbin Carroll up, but, beyond that, there are not really any major prospects still to come. I mean, you can argue they're going to get better, ideally, out of Brandon Pfaadt. They'll have more Jordan. I think Jordan Lawler is probably the big guy. I should correct that. They'll have Jordan Lawler ideally playing some, but, Drew Jones is still a ways away. Their 2023 top draft pick, Tommy Troy, is a ways away. And then it's more guys like Slade Ciccone, Jorge Barosa, Justin Martinez, Dominic Fletcher, who are more on the kind of roster margin stuff. But they're, assuming Lawler doesn't get the starting shortstop job over Geraldo Perdomo, there's not really going to be any major help coming from the minor leagues. So you got to figure, if you're the Diamondbacks, if you want to take that shot, you kind of need to bring in more outside talent. So I kind of wish they'd done a little more, but I still feel like this is a really solid team overall anyway.
I just don't think they've done enough, and I don't necessarily love.
No, and I agree with
their core to bet on them bouncing back into it, like them building off 84 and then going to 87-90 range. I just don't see it.
No, and I think like Dan, I agree with Dan that I think this is probably at best like an 88 win team,
and that means a lot went well, and they were also probably buyers at the deadline. and brought in some
I think
more
that's something to keep
reinforcements.
And I think that's something to keep in mind too. Is obviously the Zips projections only see the roster as it currently is, and it doesn't assume necessarily that this team will get better at some point during the season, or that it will, better said, it will make moves in order to get better. So I definitely see if Arizona's in the wild card race, and I think they should be, that they're going to make some move in there to to improve themselves. And the offseason isn't over yet. I mean, again, spring training is less than a month away at this point, but there is still time for teams to do something, and there's still time for Arizona to address the issues it has. But I think it's already a pretty solid floor that team is at right now.
I don't disagree. Jon Tayler, nothing to plug because we don't plug, although we still support.
No free clout.
Go free who?
No free clout.
No free clout. No.
Yeah. If you
Fangraphs, send us some merch. Send us some stuff, and we'll put.
If you want my endorsement, you got to get it the old-fashioned way by bribing me.
Yeah, 100%. We have no shame here.
No, this is a shame-free zone. This is like a teenager's bedroom. No shame here. We're all out. I don't really know what that meant either. It sounded better in my head.
Yeah.
I like how everyone can hear the workshop process as it's going. The little Bruce Valanche in my head just trying to workshop jokes, but they're all coming out flat.
Hey, we got to do what we got to do, Jon Tayler. Jon Tayler, always a pleasure, and I will talk to you next week.
Sounds good.